Okay, we're here at the Marin One Bay Area, Plan Bay Area Visioning Workshop. And I guess they got so much vigorous public input in the last few sessions that they are now clamping down severely on public input. No surprise. And also, they've got a huge police presence here to intimidate the people that are coming to these meetings into silence. So there's some ground rules now that they're passing out. If you wish to speak, you must fill out a speaker card and hand it to a designated staff person. And then they'll only give you 2 minutes to speak when called upon. They will only allow new speakers to come up, and you must disagree respectfully. Please do not shout or interrupt. So as you can see, they're clamping down once again. We expected it. We knew they were going to try to shut down public input and control the meeting, and that's what they're doing. I can only hope that the people of Marin, regardless of their political affiliation, will get to ask the questions that they want and hopefully get some answers. I know I haven't gotten any answers as to what social justice is all about, and what this plan is going to cost, where the jobs are going to come from, and so we'll see what happens.
It's there are so many assumptions that I really would have to digest it a lot better. It's way too much assumptions to understand, but in general, I very much think we should be planning together. I'm very pro-transit, developing in transit neighborhoods and in beefing up the bus service and the bicycle paths. I believe that less and less people are going to drive cars because young people are waiting until their mid-20s to get their first license. And since 2007, people have been driving less cars, so I'd like to see that research reflected in the one plan. I do think we need to be organizing ourselves to be much more local in our living situations, so we're not having to drive all over. 63%.
Don't you think that should be a choice? Don't you think that should be a choice where people live?
Absolutely, but you can't choose if you can't take a bus to where you work. So there isn't a choice now for good transportation, for good busing. Okay. So I don't think we have a very good choice. 63% of people drive to Marin from outside of Marin in private cars.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's too expensive to live here for their jobs.
So this plan is going to create. Where do you live?
I live in Greenbrick.
Okay, so this plan is calling for high density, 4-story, 6-story kind of walk-ups near mass transit. Okay, and the densities that they're calling for are thousands and thousands of new low-income units.
I wish that was true, but that's not what I'm seeing in the plan from what I read. Not in Marin, they're not calling for that.
Okay, what are they calling?
Numbers that are in keeping with the different neighborhoods that they're looking at specifically. So I don't.
So what number? This is a 9 Bay Area County thing, so it may not be happening in your location. I'm just saying that I was just wondering whether you supported that in your area.
I definitely support higher density where there's other facilities and services like libraries and stores and jobs and communities, so people don't have to drive hours every day to get to their jobs. I do think we should be developing that.
Okay, but how can you guarantee, I'm just wondering, I mean, it sounds good, how can you guarantee where somebody's going to work, though? How do you know that when you live in one location that you're going to work in that same area? I mean, how can you kind of determine that? I mean, you kind of got to go where your job is, right? I mean, what happens if you get fired and you got to find a new job?
Well, then you move is the idea, I guess. I think what they're finding out is that a lot of people would rather they choose to live closer to where they work instead of having to drive or, go all the way across the bay or from Fairfield down to Marin or whatever. People would rather live closer and have a better quality of life instead of spending all this time on a freeway. And I think we really need to make that more possible for people. Make it possible to choose not to be living in a car all the time.
Okay. Do you think that there should be room for people to choose what type of homes they should have? Because in this plan, it's all high-density housing. There is no single-family residential homes that they're calling for in the future.
that's not what I see in the plan at all. What I see is that they're calling for areas along transit where there's space available, as space comes available, to encourage by giving more money in terms of funding, public funding, to density-rich development. But they're not prescribing that I have to sell my one-story house and build a four-story house there. They're not prescribing to anybody to do that. They're just saying, in terms of planning, we should be planning in a rational way that really would help us reduce our dependence on the single automobile. I totally agree with that.
Okay. Are you aware that the developers are all going to get CEQA waivers? They don't have to do any GHG calculations for the cars and light trucks when they do these developments. So it's not necessarily environmentally better.
What I saw was not that they were waivers, but that they would like special treatment from CEQA, which I saw special treatment. I read it. Okay, well, I read it and it said special treatment.
Yeah, it says CEQA waivers.
Well,
that's what it says.
I would like them to.
No, I don't. I don't like someone telling me how I'm going to live, that I might have to get up my house and live in stack and pack housing. I don't like that at all. And I heard that other guy with you. He was just a filibuster.
Oh, I know.
You know. No, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live in a social engineered home. I don't want to have someone telling me when I can turn off the light at night, where I can park, if I can even have a car. I don't like that at all.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have had some indication as to what the plan is.
Okay.
We know where they're going. We're looking at transportation. We're looking at communities. We were looking at this 6 months ago. We attended, at least I attended. We participated. We're going to see tonight what they have gathered from that meeting and how we're going to move forward.
So you were in the last go-around of visioning sessions?
Yes.
Okay. And are you a resident here in the area?
San Samo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I wish that more people, when they tried to reverse AB 32, understood that this was going to be the kind of result, that we wouldn't have power over how our property is dealt with, and our cities would be pressured to do things the citizens don't want done. So I just wish more people would be more informed.
And so, do you support the plan?
No.
Okay. Well, you look like you must be some rabble rouser, and are you what party affiliation are you?
I'm not a rabble rouser. I've never been rude to a waitress in my life, but I know tyranny when I see it.
Okay.
This is tyranny.
So how has this process been for you? Has it been explained to you? I mean, sufficiently to make decisions about how and where you're supposed to live in the future?
Yeah, what you got here is a plan that will completely reconfigure the landscape for 7.2 million people. You have this little ill-promoted little effort here with 100 and something people, 60 or 80 of which are installed shills, and this is designed to create the illusion of public support. And that is an illusion. They are manufacturing consensus, which is what ICLEI does. And they'll be utilizing the Delphi technique, which is designed to bring a room to a predetermined outcome. And they're going to talk to us like Mr. Rogers and act like there's a genuine public process going on. But this is, they think, ADD, already done deal.
Kabuki Theater is about to start in the other room, and they've got a tight rein on the input process for the public. And they're basically allowing only 2 minutes of public comment, if that, for the people that are in this audience. They're going to show them meaningless videos, give them vague information, and they'll probably ask them to vote. And the problem is that we are deciding the future of over 9 million people. If you use their statistics, 7.2 million right now, another 2 million supposedly moving to the Bay Area by 2035, 2040. And we're all supposed to decide that living in stack and pack housing next to mass transit and getting us out of our cars is a good idea. They just want to sell us on the idea, and they really don't want our input. So hopefully the people of Marin, if they have something to say about this, will speak up. So standing behind me is the woman that body slammed me at the other meeting in Dublin, who then accused me of pushing her. So as you can see, MTC staffers don't mind using violence to get their way and to shut down the public.
I'm glad I could finally get here. Everything was too conspired to keep me away.
ABAG and MTC have been working with the cities in Marin to help shape a future for Marin County and for the entire region. But it's important to note that nothing in this regional plan is usurping local control. And I've been working very diligently with ABAG to ensure that local control is not given up. But we are facing the need to have to address the state legislation that has been put forward, AB 32 and SB 375, which was introduced by Senator Steinberg and passed by our state legislature. There is an opportunity to consider how we make our future investments. Where are the most appropriate places to grow and develop? How do we address those? And the data demonstrates that most of the growth in our state actually happens from our children and our grandchildren. The growth comes from within. So how do we manage that in a way that makes sense to our communities? To do this, we want to have an open and inclusive accommodate a projected growth of almost 2 million residents in this 9 Bay Area county between now and 2040. What type of transportation system will we need to address that type of growth? And the question is not if we grow, but how, and what kind of Bay Area are we going to leave our children and grandchildren? Will they be able to afford to live here? Will they want to live here? And how do we grow in a way, and this is especially important to me, that reflects the unique characteristics of each of our communities, the reasons that we have moved to the areas that we've moved to. How do we maintain that local characteristic so that a one-size-fits-all approach isn't the approach that we're using? These are the state budget, and many of us in local government are dealing with unfunded mandates. It is a challenge, but if we can communities that respect all of our environmental concerns, our infrastructure concerns, as well as the constraints, whether it be water or infrastructure. And I'm hoping that we hear some of those here tonight.
As Supervisor Adams mentioned, we know that California is growing from within, so we can't sit by and just think that the way things are today is the way they can always be. But we can shape the future that we want to have, and I think that is the important part of this. The only other point I would make in my brief introductory comments is that transportation fills an enormous piece of the puzzle of where our climate change emissions come from in California. And in the Bay Area even more than in other parts of the state because of our urbanized nature. And so as we think about the relationship between transportation and land use, we're also thinking about the relationship between transportation and responding to climate change issues. I think that forums like this are happening around the Bay Area. This is our opportunity to speak for our own interests in the North Bay and Marin County. And as Supervisor Adams also mentioned, she and I will be here listening to comments this evening. I think it is important for folks to speak up. There are other opportunities beyond the 2 minutes that each speaker will have, but I encourage you to take advantage of that to bring the things that are on your mind to our attention. I'm going to be turning it over now to our regional, from the regional agencies that Supervisor Adams and I represent to the local agency that looks out for transportation and to some extent our countywide transportation and land use thoughts, and that's the chair of our Transportation Authority of Marin, Alice Fredericks.
We're here for a dialogue about land use and transportation. These are two subjects that are critical to our future. Land use issues are a local concern. It's a topic that engenders a lot of passionate debate in Marin County. Officials in the cities have been working to make sure that decisions of local land use are respected and that local decisions take into account some of the regional goals that affect us. We share a common purpose, which is to make Bay Area communities places we want to live and places we're proud to pass on to coming generations. TAM works on the transportation part of this picture. TAM is the Transportation Authority of Marin. We work on creative projects and infrastructure investments that are tailored to fit our local needs and promote our mobility. These projects include building more bike and pedestrian facilities, looking for opportunities for new mobility like bike sharing, encouraging use of carpools and van pools, and using creative incentives such as reimbursing user costs and creating a dynamic ride-share program. Finally, we are continuing to build our electrical vehicle charging stations. We look forward to the outcome of tonight's dialogue, but also to continue the brainstorming in service of our great community. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, kids, settle down. All right, let me.
We own property.
You know what? I was raised to allow people to have a conversation and to listen.
There is no conversation. This is rigged.
This is Big Brother.
Okay.
I don't know.
The public asked for a meeting to come and be heard, okay? You are going to have 2 minutes to get up and talk about your issues. We're going to you ask the questions. We're going to start this in just a minute. I'm going to ask you to try to contain yourself a little bit, and let's let the process start and unfold, okay?
While you steal our property?
Okay. I'm going to introduce a facilitator. If this gets to the point where we're not having a conversation with good public input, where we can hear all of the different perspectives, then there's no value in being here then. Okay? So I want to hear the people that want to have opposing views, positive views. What about it is upsetting to you? I'm seeing signs out there. Please come to the microphone and use your time, and let's try to be respectful of each other if we can. I know we can do this. Let's give it a shot. And with that, I'm going to turn over the facilitator who's going to try to help us get through this, Lou Hexter.
Ready.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for coming out. I really appreciate your being here. And I know that many of you are here because you're very interested and passionate about what is going on in this process and the future for our community here in Marin and also throughout the region. So my job tonight is to just remind you about where we are in this process, what's coming up next, and also to introduce you to the program tonight and make sure you're clear on how the opportunities you have to participate this evening. So just to start out about where we are in this Plan Bay Area process, this is the second round of public outreach that we've had. The prior one was in May when we introduced the planning process to you, and tonight we're coming back with a few areas of input that we're looking for at this point, and that will be wrapping up here in the month of January. We'll be summarizing the findings from all of these meetings and workshops throughout the next couple of months, and that will provide some input into a recommendation for a preferred scenario that will be considered by the ABAG and MTC boards. That recommendation will be occurring in April of 2012, this spring, and again being put before the boards and deliberated in May and June. The first draft of the Plan Bay Area will be released in the fall of 2012, and these are all opportunities that you will have for further input and comment on what you're seeing happening. And as the supervisor mentioned, we're all moving forward towards adopting a Plan Bay Area a little over a year from now in the spring of 2013. So we want to make sure that
you will not have an impact on this plan. No action is not up there on the board.
Let me ask one more time. Please do not speak out. We have some time for public comment.
There is never time for public
comment.
comment.
The website that is shown here is another opportunity that you have to stay informed about this process, provide input into the process. There is an opportunity for you to sign up to be notified whenever updates are provided on this site, so I encourage you to sign up for those updates. They're delivered directly to your email, and you can keep up to speed with what's going on here. So tonight what we are really interested in hearing from you, in particular from the planning standpoint, are a couple of elements to this Plan Bay Area. One, dealing with transportation and the investments choices that we need to make for directing the resources that are coming to the Bay Area, and that's entitled Transportation Trade-Offs, and that is Station A. It's directly across the hall from this theater. It's in the Manzanita room.
And then the second station deals with land use, the other major element. And there we're going to have a dialogue and discussion with you about what you consider to be the quality of complete communities and what that looks like for you. That is in the Friends room, which is around the corner from this. I think you'll have some ushers that'll help you, as well as signs. The last station is in this room. We've set this station up as a public comment, and we have some ground rules to help us have an orderly conversation here. And so you're welcome to join any or all of these stations tonight. You got a sticker when you showed up, and that was just our way of trying to manage the size of the groups. We have the breakout groups. You can start wherever you'd like, but this is a suggestion. We're going to be calling time at about 30-minute intervals, and that will give you an opportunity to check out a different station. If you're starting at station A, maybe we can go to that slide. I thought we had that slide. If you start at station A, you'll be given an opportunity to move into station B. If you start at station B, you can move to C and then A. Your choice. We just want to make sure that we have enough room for everybody to be comfortable in. Station C is the room here for public comments, and the ground rules that we've set up for tonight so that we can hear from as many people as possible. We have speaker cards, so once we've adjourned to the stations, you'll be given an opportunity to fill out a speaker card if you start here. We're going to have 2 minutes for comment. I'm going to call people up to the microphone as I collect the cards. We're really interested in hearing from as many people as possible, so if you've already spoken your 2 minutes, we're going to try and keep new people coming to the microphone. Perfectly fine for you to disagree, we expect that, but we ask that you please do not shout or interrupt so that we can get through as many comments as we have. We also have the comment forms that you picked up at the front door. Those are very important as well to us. That's a way for you to document in your own words what you think about the process, what you think about the questions that we have before you. Please use those forms. In the event we don't get a chance to hear from absolutely everybody, that is our way of documenting what you have to say. And we're also aware that there will be some questions that are posed tonight, some of which we'll be able to answer and some of which we will not be able to answer. But we do make a commitment to all of you that the questions that are posed tonight, both the answered ones and the ones that are unanswered, will be posted to our website, as well as all of the comments that are made from all the stations. So if you don't get a chance to visit one of the stations, you can find out what happened there tonight by going to the website. One last item is that all of the comments from each of these workshops will be put up on the website. We are also doing a virtual workshop that'll be up in the next few days. So for folks that aren't able to come out to the workshops, they'll be able to go online, look at the videos, and respond to the questions that you saw in the comment form. So we're hoping that between coming out to the workshops and visiting our website, we'll reach out to a lot of folks. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we adjourn. Station A, Station B, or Station C.
The whole group. Don't break us up words. Let's have our talk right now. Through the questions. You can't divide us up and then have talk. That's not right.
Workshops that are completely rigged by
Excuse me, you will have the opportunity. This is, if you want to stay in here and provide the public comments, stay in this session or go to one of the other stations.
Everybody with your own comment.
We don't know what you're doing. We are fully aware of what you're doing. And we will not stand for it. The people are not accepting this. Supervisor Kinsey, Susanne, running for office, we are not accepting this.
Get up to the microphone and make your comments in 2 minutes.
Bad news. The Republican National Committee voted down Agenda 21 unanimously and are calling for the complete disassociation with the UN based on its catastrophic effects on the United States and our sovereignty. So the jig is up, the ignoring part is up, the looking at us like we're Martians part is up. That chapter is over. We're in a new chapter now.
Another pretend public input. Let's go in here. Let's see what Station A is all about.
is where, oh, here. This is where I'm having Let's see, we should spend more money on improving speed and reliability in bus and light rail. We should increase our money on public transit. So subsidized transit. Fund traffic congestion relief projects such as adding turn lanes on roads or reconfiguring. Okay, provide financial incentives to cities to build more multi-unit housing near public transit. More frequent bus service. Okay, they're going to maintain the highways and local roads. Okay, that's nice. More bicycles. Let's see, smart driving. Okay, so they want to encourage the changes to driver behavior. Social change. Social engineering. Change driver behavior. Because, you know, our behavior is bad right now. We all have cars. We shouldn't have cars.
What about the unions for the auto workers unions? I mean, aren't they going to be affected by this? They'll be building less cars, and then they'll be unable to feed their families because One Bay Area has this plan to take all cars off the road. What about those unions? You probably have the other unions here that, you know, want to build this utopia that they're trying to you know, create. But what about the auto workers? Really? They should be here protesting with us. You would think.
Mandatory.
That's my chips, my poker chips. I'm sure that's going to be really my vote. I'd actually rather play poker than vote here in those little test tubes. But we're gonna get the business here tonight, as usual. Anyone else need a flyer or hasn't gotten one? Anyone else need a flyer? There you go.
Are the orange chips 100?
The orange chips are 100.
Making time to be here tonight. We definitely want to hear from everyone. Your participation is very important. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard throughout this conversation. So let's please be respectful. My name is Jamila Jordan, and I work for a firm called MIG. And tonight we're here as an objective third-party facilitator to help move this discussion along smoothly. We're going to start this session, also known as Transportation Trade-Offs, with a brief video. And the video is a primer on transportation funding and future projects. Let's go ahead and run the video.
I have a question, please.
We have a question back here. We're going to take questions after, okay? Thank you very much.
You said you were from MIG, but you didn't say what that means. What is that?
I'm sorry. MIG stands for More, Iafano, and Goldstein.
More what? More what?
Thank you. We're going to start.
What is that?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's a planning firm we work for. It's a private planning consulting firm, and we do a lot of work around facilitation for public meetings. Okay, it's More, Iacofano, and Goldsmith. I'm sorry, I misspoke. IACOFONO.
So who's paying you?
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and run the video.
Why aren't county employees doing this? Why are we paying for consultants?
They're too scared to run the meetings themselves.
Plan Bay Area is a long-range land use and transportation plan that seeks to answer two separate but related questions. How and where should the Bay Area grow over the next 25 years? And how should we invest in the transportation infrastructure needed to support this growth? We are building on past plans, both local and regional, to create a flexible blueprint that will be updated every few years. Coming up are these key decisions: how to invest the billions in revenues expected to be available for transportation over the coming decades, and what policies should be put in place to achieve goals for the economy, the environment, and social equity. The transportation projects that are included in Plan Bay Area must spread the benefits and burdens equitably across communities in the region. Likewise, Taken as a whole, they shouldn't worsen air quality, and they need to help us reach our greenhouse gas reduction goal. $68 billion is a lot of money, but remember, it's spread over 25 years, and it's not enough to meet all our needs. In thinking about how to invest that money, there are some things we ought to consider. In past plans, 80% of our budget was directed to keep our local roads and transit systems in a state of...
They're misrepresenting the amount of money.
Fix it.
As you know, as usual, there's often never enough money to fund all of the transportation projects within a network. Plan Bay Area will consider a number of potential investments. However, all of them will not be funded due to limited resources. So today we're asking for your help. We want to ask for you to provide us with some information on some of the hard choices, the tough choices that MTC's and ABAG's Board of Commissioners has to make. Okay? In a moment, I'll ask you to stand up and make your decisions using the tokens that you received when you walked into the room. Everyone should have a token. If not, raise your hand and we'll have someone come by and give them to you. There are 3 stations where you will be asked to register your vote using your tokens. Very briefly, I will explain the topics at each of the 3 stations, and then I'll give you about 10 minutes or so to make your vote with your tokens. Any questions afterwards, sir?
I just have one. You're using the word investment. And when I looked at I'm not stupid, I'm not ignorant. Could you mind rephrasing that and maybe use the word cost for the rest of the evening?
We'll consider that, sir. Thank you for that suggestion. I'm going to go on to station 2. There are also 9 jars that represent strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to reduce driving. That's the orange station there in the middle, okay? So once again, you have the option of using your 5 orange tokens and voting for the priority policy that you feel strongly about, that you feel is most appropriate for your county. Once again, there's a 10th jar labeled Other, and you'll have the opportunity to exchange one of your orange tokens for an orange blank card where you'll be able to write in your own strategies or suggestions.
Who serve, instead of making us feel like you're doing us a favor by having these meetings and giving us time to speak, should understand that you're working for us, and your positions are based on our vote. So folks, please listen to these people. They're acting out because they don't think you're listening. What, 2013, we will know that you didn't listen, and we're going to throw you out of office.
First of all, it's not really a question and answer when you're not giving us answers. All you're doing is taking our comments, writing them down just like you did last week. You're dividing up everybody. The people who really need to be hearing this right now are in different rooms. They're not hearing this. They need to be hearing all these questions that we're posing to you. You're taking this down. Who knows? You could take that paper and use it for toilet paper. We don't know. You know, you say you're going to answer the questions on the website. I haven't seen any answers on the website whatsoever. But what I want to know most of all is, first of all, in this down economy, where are you going to get the money to pay for all of this all across California? California is billions, with a B, in debt right now. Huge deficit, no way out. Governor Brown is hoping that we're all going to be stupid enough to vote for tax increases when we don't have the money to pay the bills we have now to pay for this and other programs. Second of all, I want to know why you're not willing to put this to the voters. Let all of us decide, not you, not some small committees who are going through the motions of these silly meetings. Why don't you put this on the state ballot? Are you afraid that we're going to say no, that this is ridiculous, that maybe the truth will get out, that we think that this is just absolute garbage? And third, you've said that there's not going to be any eminent domain issues, that there's not going to be any seizures. Are you willing to be personally liable and responsible for any eminent domain seizures for any of this across the state of California? Thank you.
Clayton Smith, followed by Joan N. and Richard.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the person from Corte Madera who I attended recently, the meetings concerning the property that's going to be developed on the Wind Cup factory location. And It was interesting. What got me to the meeting was the fact that I'd seen an article in the Wall Street Journal on this particular project, as in the article featuring the life and times of the developer, Mr. McFarland, who basically had just recently lost $1 billion of your retirement money over there at CalPERS. He basically lost $1 billion of your money and your money too. And he's the guy who's now developing multitudes of these properties all over the Bay Area. And I had to ask myself, how could this possibly be? Well, of course, the tell is in the article. He is financed by Goldman Sachs, the evil corporation of finance that has basically starting wars all over this world, that is basically ripping off taxpayers, that is the focus of crony capitalism, and that in the MF Global debacle has stolen $40,000 of my own personal money. And I can't get it back. And it's kind of a phenomena that I look at these people who present themselves as supposed liberal Democrats sitting over there and realize that you're really in bed with probably the worst form of fascist capitalism that exists on this planet, Goldman Sachs, and you wonder about where what the incentive is in this business. This is, again, just like the Pentagon, only these properties like the Fireside and this property over there at Corte Madera, these are ways of using social sympathy to finance the exploitation of these communities and to line the pockets of the multi-billionaires that are living all over this planet. Okay. And it's when I say the death of democracy, we have here the death of democracy. And you people who calling yourselves Democrats are at the front and center of leading the charge to put an end to what has made this country decent and great.
All right,
thanks.
Thank you. That's your time. Okay. Joan or John?
I'm here. I believe, through having read and studied a little bit about what's going on here, that although you say you're asking for public input here, I believe the outcome is predetermined, and this is sort of a formality of putting forth what would appear to be something that does involve the public. I'm a home builder who's been working in this area for many years now, and I have watched over the years as city general plans continue to evolve, you might say, but interestingly, they all evolve toward the same goal. And all the city planning agencies work off of something called Growing Smart, which I believe is passed down from the top. It's definitely not a bottom-up approach. It's passed down from the top, and so you can easily say that it's a bottom-up and communities decide for themselves, but the directive comes from a much higher place, and the ultimate goal, as you know and we know, is to create more of this so-called mixed-use development, which makes people live on top of some hardware store or that sort of thing, allows them maybe one parking space. I've noticed the development recently has restricted parking and restricted the automobile. It would be maybe acceptable for the fact that the public transportation is never going to, it's never going to work in this country. It never has and never will. People are not, the country's not set up that way. You'll never get it. Every mass transportation project that has been proposed is just immensely over budget, and in fact will never get built. So we just don't think that this is something that you're really interested in finding out much about what we think. We value our property rights above all, and we think that this impinges on them a great deal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, since you have the microphone, we're going to take your comment, and then I'm going to give the panel just a few moments to answer any of the questions that they heard or respond, and then we'll take a break to move on to the next station. And those of you who haven't spoken yet, I have cards for, you're welcome to stick around for the next station. We'll try and get to all of these. We'll get to you first, and then we'll take the new cards. So Margaret, please.
I appreciate the fact that we are able to speak I'm sorry that there's sometimes a lot of noise after a comment, but my viewpoint is that we are able to communicate with those who are supervisors, who are people of planning, and people who are concerned. However, SB 375 has taken away CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, from considerations of affordable housing. And affordable housing also has changed in Marin County's unincorporated area from a minimum of 400 square feet to counting a unit of housing as 200 square feet. And I too have been around people who live outside the community providing services at a very low salary in rehabilitation facilities. They have children and families, and they are unable to come into our county because, A, I don't believe some of them even knew about the fact that there was a Section 8 housing listing. They are unable to come into our community because there is insufficient housing. The housing that is projected to provide in my particular area, Southern Marin, is scheduled to be on current A-plane 90 to 80-foot bay mud. This is not sustainable, and yet these are the places that are encouraged for safe housing. We must have housing that has parking, because the service industry people do need to go around the county and provide facilities that they use in their business. Parking is essential, and it's been cut out of most affordable housing planning. Thank you.
That help influence your decisions? Who would like to start on that section? Transportation investments. Section A. Yes, ma'am, the black. Important thing, refund the school bus. Refund the fund school buses.
Here's 2 green cards. I'm still working on that.
These are policies, right? These are the every morning and every afternoon. Single parent rides kids to the school.
That's a great comment there. Safe routes to school is how we describe it. But the woman talked a little bit about the need to rehab some of the buses, the school buses for every student. 3 buses for subsidize all of.
Your great plan, because it does take subsidy, which I guess means you're sustainable. I retired out of BART, and BART was the best system at about 55 to 58% that it brought in. The rest is subsidized, and that's one of the best. Golden Gate Transit is horrendous. Muni is terrible. It's all subsidized, and that investment is taxes.
So the question specifically is?
Yeah, how are you going to do that?
1 second here, we'll ask Lisa.
It is true that many of the transit systems in the region their operations are paid for in part by transit fares, and they are paid for in part by revenues collected through government, through taxes. We're asking you here tonight to vote for your preferences. If that is something for which you do not support, you have the opportunity here to make that point known. Others, I think, have expressed interest in seeing continued or perhaps expanded service, but you are correct, there's a cost for that. That's exactly the kind of discussion we want everyone to engage in tonight.
Thank you, Lisa, for that very comprehensive answer. Next question. Yes, ma'am, with the start one.
I thought there should be more frequent bus service because to encourage people to take the bus, which is more efficient than so many cars being on the road, you need more options.
That's a great comment. So the woman discussed the need for more options, more frequent bus service to accommodate the number of customers that we have. Next question. Start in the back, the black.
Yeah, I'd like to know how you could take a vote on something for all of Marin County with this just so few people here, that one person is representing, what, 10, 20,000 votes per person, and do they all feel or agree with that person? And is this going to be placed on a general ballot for the general public at large
to be voting on, rather than just a couple of people that think, this is a cool idea, that's a cool idea. I mean, where do you get your consensus of just a couple of people in hundreds of thousands, millions of people?
Thank you, sir. That's a good question. So how are we, is this representative, more or less, is what I hear you're saying? Are we representing all of Marin County? And then to what extent is this information that we're capturing here today reflective of the actual plan?
And also in part with that, the people who just placed those tokens in there, which appear to be more tokens than there are actually people here, but that aside, I'm just wondering, are those people actual citizens of Marin County that actually live here, or are they from other counties that just showed up to vote?
Right, so when we came in earlier, I asked people to raise their hand and see if they were from.
The consequences are devastating. So I really appreciate the effort. I think that there is a lot of professionals, respected professionals involved in this process. And I really believe that this process is needed. The process is not perfect, so I'm going to comment on some improvements that we could see in this process. One of them is the involvement of more low-income and minority populations in this process. I know that there are some efforts in this, and I really appreciate all the effort that's being implemented. But for example, this meeting, as you can see, Marin Center is not accessible to public transportation, especially at this time of the evening. People have to drive, or to usually drive here or carpool, and this is not really very accessible to a lot of people, including a great percentage of population in Marin County. So I really would like to see some improvements in the future regarding the accessibility of public meetings. Also, I would like to see the language more accessible to participants, not only, I'm not saying only in the other language, but also in English, to be more accessible to great part of the population that don't understand acronyms or, like more background information about the terms being used. So overall, I think that it's important to, like many speakers said before, that it's a ground up kind of process, and that this doesn't stop here as the plans are being implemented, that the community participation is stimulated throughout the years, not only 1 year, and that you hear people. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Okay. One more comment from Gail, and then we're going to take a break while people are coming to join us. Go ahead, Gail.
Hi, my name is Gail Baird. I'm a policy advocate here in Marin County. I serve on a couple of boards here in Marin, and I do a lot of outreach work. One of the things I would like to say is that I know, looking at the supervisors, I'm like preaching to the choir, but affordable housing and low-income housing really needs to be defined. I'm listening to everything that people are saying here. I agree with what you're saying. I love your passion. I don't agree with all of it, but I agree with what you're saying with the information that you have. So one thing that I would encourage that the supervisors do, the county do, is educate the masses as to what affordable housing is and what it is not, what it looks like and what it can be. Okay? Unless you have a very good retirement plan, many people are going to need affordable housing, or should I say housing that is affordable at their income level. It is not what you project or in your mind what affordable housing is. You're thinking at Wendover or some of the other places that have failed in being a good place to build affordable housing for one, and the management of affordable housing. Affordable housing and low-income housing are two separate things. Okay?
So let me turn it to Joanna Bullock from ABAG, and she will give a very brief presentation, and then I might put that question to you. Do you want an in-depth discussion, answers to a couple questions, or do you want to hear from as many people as possible? We can't do both. So, Joanna.
Out to Cole, we asked planning directors, tell us where the growth is going to happen in your jurisdictions. And they literally took a map and made circles and sent it back to us. We compiled that list, and then we spoke to them in a little bit more depth about the characteristics of those places that I'll speak about in a minute. The county remains very rural over this projected growth period. There aren't really a lot of changes in it until they work and play. They meet they meet the diverse needs of residents. They're safe, they're inclusive, they're well planned, and they offer equality of opportunity and services for everyone. I think I didn't say this in the last session, but this is a 25-year plan. So these changes aren't happening next year. They're not happening in the next 3 years. The changes we're talking about, again, are over a 25-year period. Now, yeah, we do projections, and some of them are really on, and some of them may not be, but this isn't going to happen tomorrow. So we really are talking.
In our last session, there were so many questions. So I want to get a sense, how many of you have questions tonight? Would you raise your hand if you have questions you want to pose? So about 6 people have questions. How many of you want to make a comment tonight?
Comment and question.
Okay. Now, depending on the nature of your questions, if they are particularly technical or detailed, we may not be able to get to all the questions and provide answers and all the comments. Last session was really frustrating because people wanted answers, but some of the questions were very technical, and it was difficult for Joanna to have answers just like that. So we will do our best in the very short time we have allotted, so please be patient with us and respectful of each other, and we'll get around to as many people as we can.
And let me try to preface.
So let me go from table to table and make sure we get around. Okay, so let's start here. Did one of you have a question or a comment? Please.
Yeah, the whole Bay Area 1 plan is predicated on the need to reduce greenhouse gases, and almost every one of your suggestions or strategies or adjustments to planning are not directly tied to greenhouse gases. They're tangential. The only way to affect greenhouse gases directly is to encourage, in a real substantive way rather than just giving rah-rah, to cars that are either electric or battery and fuel efficient. And that is a direct connection to reducing the greenhouse gases, because in increasing traffic and congestion at transit centers actually decreases air quality. And so you're giving a benefit to the region at the expense of the local.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Okay, how about this table? Who has
I have a comment. I sat on MTC's Senior and Disabled Advisory Committee until it was disbanded a year ago. Nowhere in any of these rooms have been senior or disabled issues being addressed. There are general questions, but not specifics, and this is very irritating to me.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to MTC.
I would like to also make the same comment that was made at the first table, that an extremely effective way to reduce greenhouse gases is to move to electric vehicles.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, anything else? All right, going over here. Smile, you're on camera.
Oh, thank you. Well, a couple of questions. One is the whole process of the spending of federal dollars when we need more education, we need better schools, we need infrastructure, we need water, storm drains. So that's it's where our priorities. So it goes back to the federal government, to the state on transportation. I agree with the first and second table on reducing the methane, reducing the trucks and diesel trains emissions. So you have to change the technology. One of the things that did come out is the idea people in 20, 25 years will be telecommuting, and I think that's an issue. So the transportation funding really needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, how about you?
Now, Marin has the highest income in California, and we really need to have places, we need to plan our communities so that all of our workers can live here, along with retired people like myself. And I live in the Redwoods, and our Redwoods has 50 units of affordable housing with On one side, 42 apartments for families, and on the other side, housing for 8 apartments for disabled. And we need to plan our community so that everybody is housed, and we can't have this traffic going over the bridge that has increased 25% and more in 5 years than we had before. And all of our growth is with our service workers also.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. And I appreciate you addressing the land use issue in some of your comments. That's really supposed to be the focus of this particular mini workshop, and trying to define what a complete community is. And you're talking about housing choices and including housing for all. So thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I am from a land development background, and I found in the mid-90s a very odd thing occurring in our Southern California building area, because there were so many changes that were taking place. We found that private-public partnerships within our communities were the developers of choice. And now we're seeing the same thing on steroids happening in our area. When you look at the planning aspect and you look at the wildlands map, everybody can go to www.thewildlands project map and take a look at how this plan up on the screen is being developed. It's very important to recognize that there is a bigger plan behind the plan, and it is unimaginable. And that's why many of us are here and very frustrated and holding signs, because these are rigged meetings. These are meetings that are not telling the truth. This is all Agenda 21. This is going to, as my sign says, take away all of our freedoms for all nations, for all people, for all time. And anyone here, I please ask you to go to freedomadvocates.org. Take a look at the Wildlands Project map, and you'll be standing here too with signs in horror, as I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I wanted to respond to your comment a minute ago about focusing on land use and sustainable communities. And what I want to remind people is I'm also an advocate for electric vehicles and endorse the comments made earlier. But what I'd like people to remember is transportation is land use.
Yes.
And we use that land for driving, and we don't zone for it. So we need to take that land use, which causes so much emissions and bad air, which causes health conditions and so forth. We need to make that a zero-emission land use. So please support electric vehicles.
Good. Thank you. Yes, and we certainly don't want to silo off land use and transportation. It's really all about the link between them. Yes.
Sorry, this isn't about land use so much. It's a general comment. I'm feeling extremely frustrated, and I guess I'm echoing what the presenters have said in all the meetings so far, of having such short amount of time, and having a lot of extremely important issues to be talking about and thinking about. And some of us perhaps have not thought about these things until this evening. And so my question, which is just a general sort of rhetorical question, if even presenters are frustrated by the minimal amount of time that we have for each of these things, then why in the world is this such a short meeting? Why couldn't this have been a longer meeting so that everybody who wants to speak or who has questions can, without either being talked over, which I've seen happen, or basically having had just a simple little answer given that really doesn't address their questions at all. This is not long enough, and I'm frustrated at that, and so I guess I'm standing with all the people who are doing that here. Everybody seems frustrated, so what's going to happen with this?
Thank you. All right, excuse me. Yes, hello.
Hi. I'm the chairwoman of Novato Community Alliance, and many of our people are here tonight. We do not in any way support the disruptive tactics that we have seen. On the other hand, what logic is there behind having specialized facilitators who know nothing about the local situation? What logic is there behind a meeting that is set up for the one and only time you can give input for Marin County and not have a planner who has even enough knowledge of Marin County to say, well, there's a PDA, there are 2 in San Rafael, One is the Civic Center, one is the downtown. There's one in Marinwood. There's one in Marin City. What quality of information are we getting here? We're getting bedtime stories is what we're getting. We're getting the feel-good, beautifully packaged ads, the ad campaign, the info commercial for One Bay Area. And One Bay Area is all predicated on the idea that we have to plan for 2 million new residents. Now, we don't have to plan for 2 million new residents, and there's no demographics behind that number, that 2 million. It just isn't. It's something that starts every campaign, and it's something that the supervisors repeat, and it's something that every one of your staff repeats at the beginning of every presentation, and it is not true. It is a basic tenet that is not true.
Thank you. We're hearing from many people that they question that basic assumption, think it's flawed. So we will need to respond to these concerns and give you some real information around it. That's all I have to say. All right. Yes. You.
Hi, I'm here to represent Stand Up for Neighborly Novato. We're a group that is trying to advocate for more affordable housing in Novato, more plentiful and more affordable. And also, the other thing I wanted to suggest, this is my own suggestion, is pesticides. The use of pesticides is really bad. I mean, they do this in public housing where there's children playing on the grounds, and they spray the trees, they spray the grounds, and I've seen kids, playing in the grounds, falling down and getting it, probably all over them, not knowing it. And I just think they should ban it because there's other more green methods available now. There's no reason to use the really toxic chemicals anymore. Yeah, so thank you.
They're spraying them from the jets now.
Thank you very much.
Scary.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer a comment about the statement here, the question posed here in Station B. Are jobs and housing converging in the right places in your county? Can this convergence support greater access to jobs and housing, particularly for the low and moderate income populations? I say no. Greater government involvement and control of the economy in communities is decreasing jobs and is distorting the real needs of communities and discriminating against low and moderate income populations by not allowing organic growth of the economy to provide quality jobs through real productivity, not government debt.
Right. Thank you. Good. Thank you for preparing your remarks. All right, Lisa?
Yes, I'd like to address the first couple of tables in regards to electric energy, which is being diminished by Comrade Obama by eliminating coal. You eliminate coal, you think you're just going to magically plug into the wall and you recharge your car? And then after that, once that's done, what about all these batteries? What are you going to do with all these dead batteries that can no longer be recharged? And that's a hazard in itself. Let alone you have one car per battery for a regular car. Then I don't know, what do they have? 8, 10 batteries for an electric car? So I mean, what are you going to do with all these batteries? Where are they going to go?
Where are we going to get the lithium to make all those batteries?
So I mean, the electric thing is,
Okay, thank you.
A lot of this whole process seems to be predicated on jobs, and I'd really like to know where the jobs are. All the people I know in the mid-level, certain age group, certainly over 50, are unemployed. Their jobs have gone to India and other places overseas. And those kind of professional jobs can be done by telecommuting. They don't have to drive anywhere to use a computer. The jobs that are being created are not living wage jobs in retail, which typically people will drive to, or service jobs such as gardening, which requires them to have a little truck. Low-income housing in our neighborhood, there is one vehicle for every adult in the household. So these Disneyland developments that are transit-oriented, so-called, predicated on people not driving, are not realistic. You can't go to Costco and the grocery store on the bus. You can't go to the doctor on the bus in this county, really. You can't go anywhere. But So the whole thing is based on a fallacy. I mean, where are the jobs? People have been given tax breaks to send the jobs overseas. So the only jobs that are doing well are selling more trucks and cars. That's the highest generator of income at the moment. It's all kind of crazy.
Yeah, you bring up some large policy. We're hearing a lot of larger policy issues. Appreciate hearing from all of you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Bob Gorelka, and I'm from the County of Marin Transportation Planning Section. And I was hoping to get some more detail on the land use component, transportation component, and in particular, what aspects of the Bay Area plan may require the county to modify a general plan to be consistent. For instance, I hear that there's the 2 million added people that are coming into the overall Bay Area, but what's the population target for Marin County? And is that target consistent with our general plan? And then are there other policies and elements that are proposed in terms of locating the land use that would require us to change our general plan?
Good. All right. Answer some? Yes. Thank you for that question.
Are we going to get an answer to that? That's an excellent question.
Yes, I was just turning it to Joanna.
Okay, let's hear it.
Joanna, can you?
We have 3 minutes. Okay, let's use it for that answer.
Yeah.
So what's your name? Bob. Bob, because we've only got 3 minutes and I really want to take some more comments, I'm happy to. How do you like that? I want to hear that. There are other people that really
Okay, I think we have. Hold on, I think we have one more speaker. Is that true, or two?
Answer the question. I can't question this.
All right. Why don't we hear from you two, and Joanna, if you could please briefly respond to that.
This meeting's rigged.
At least send you in the right direction for an answer to that question about the actual population projections for Marin County, where you can find that, and if there are implications to the county's general plan. But let me hear from these two people, and then we'll make sure we have time for Joanna's answer. You, sir, please be brief.
So, in your opening remarks, I heard something kind of very disturbing about we are going to provide housing for our kids. There's something in the Constitution that addresses private property and property rights and stuff. Could you, she's not listening, but could you explain that as who's the we that's going to provide housing for our kids? It's frightening.
I think she meant the region as a whole. All right.
No. What do you mean the region? What's a region?
Well, all of us, the community that lives in the Bay Area.
So I'm going to provide you housing, and you're going to provide.
No.
I have a house.
Who owns those priority development areas?
I think the sentiment is that we, as a community of people, have some responsibility to the future generations to provide housing options and choices. We together. All right? No? Okay.
Individuals, we're not
as individuals.
How do we do that? Tell us. We're here. We all came here tonight to find out things that you're saying. You're using your specific language about these things. So explain them. I did it in the other room. Greenhouse gases, sustainability, and other things. How's she going to answer the question? All right. Then I'm waiting to hear the answer.
We're going to have one more comment.
Actually, I kind of like to hear the answer too.
Okay. But you want to see?
No, I'm not going to answer it for you.
No. Do you want to give up your time so that we can try to answer something?
Sure. Go ahead, answer the question.
Any question that people have.
Where do I go for an answer to all this stuff?
Any question at all. You choose the question and let's hear an answer.
Yeah, we came here for answers.
Can we respond, Joanna, to
elementary school?
You know, a lot of these are rhetorical questions. I think that there's
one. Not. We're actually asking actual questions.
I'm sure can. All right, here's an answer to the population projection for Marin County, whether there are implications for revising the general plan.
Where did he go?
He's back there.
Hi. So, pursuant to SB 3785, jurisdictions are asked to revise their housing element based on the regional housing needs, which is related to which is related to the Sustainable Community Strategy, because the Regional Transportation Plan and the Regional Housing Needs Assessment are now linked. They're synced. They're occurring in the same period. We've always done, MTC has always done a Regional Transportation Plan every 4 years. for many years. Well, I'm not going to talk if you.
Your answer is yes. No. That is, the housing element is part of the general plan, and your answer is yes. Isn't that right?
I just said that, but I'm not going to talk if you're going to talk. Thank you. So.
That's a clarification.
I doubt it. So yes, so jurisdictions are asked to revise their housing plan, the housing element of their general plan, based on the regional housing needs. And that's always been the case too. We've always, ABAG for many, many years has done a regional housing needs allocation every 4 years. The difference now is that the regional transportation plan and the regional housing needs allocation are not done off sync, they're done in the same period. So that's what the sustainable community strategy is. It's doing those two plans in the same time period. That is what's different about this cycle. But that really, yeah, that's what's different about this cycle.
No, this cycle.
Well, you know what?
Growth.
If you're going to speak out of turn later, you wanted to know about. I'm sorry, I was trying to look for some numbers for this gentleman on population, and sir, I do have those numbers if you'd like to look at them. For the various scenarios. And so, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your question. If you could just...
My question is this. How many people here know that they closed the state parks and the national parks so they can fund this? Did anybody here know that? That's where your tax dollars are going.
Wait, I'm sorry. You're saying that we did what? We did what?
The state parks have been closed because they see lack of funds, but the funds are being funneled into the ABAG and MTC.
I don't think that's
Look it up. You
okay,
don't know. That's the problem. You don't know.
Happy to. You know? But open space is part of the. But open space is part of Planned Bay Area. It's not. It's not separate from.
No.
No. Open space is part of Planned Bay Area. Just as it's housing, it's transportation, it's economic prosperity. Open space is part of a complete community. Anyway.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Please move to Station C. Thank you. Most of you are very welcome.
So did you guys get all your questions answered?
Oh yeah, classic Delphi meeting. We don't got to answer your stinking questions.
No, and she admitted she's with Meg. She's a paid facilitator, and she doesn't know anything about the plan.
That's
this
right.
is what they do.
Exactly they don't have any answers. They don't want us to know what the answers are, because as long as they keep us quiet, and as long as they manipulate the outcome to exactly what it is that they're planning, then they can say that they have community buy-in. This is a complete and total rout that we have done tonight, but they will not acknowledge it. So the people have to get up and stand up and say, we will not take this. We will not be Delphi'd. We will not accept one plan. We will not accept one Bay Area. It's all across the United States. It's the same plan, and it's being rolled out in 2013. So stand up now and stop it, because this is your opportunity to fight it. This is UN Agenda 21.
With one of my, which my family has had for 65 years, the city comes to you and says, we're going to rezone your property. We're going to put 30 to 40 units of low-income housing on your property. So they didn't directly take my property away, but they've made it so it is totally unusable by me in the way I'd like to use it. So it's not happening through eminent domain, but the cities and the counties are controlling people's properties through rezoning. The other comment I wanted to make, touching on one of the other ladies that were here earlier, mentioning about water. 3 years ago, we were rationing water. And now the state has no qualms about saying, City of Nevada, we want you in the next 30 years, 35, 40 years, to put in 700 or 1,500 new housing units. It just doesn't make sense. I've been to a lot of meetings, a couple of them at the county level, but mostly local, and there's a lot of anger built up against what's going on here. And I don't see our local elected officials going back to the state and saying, what's up? People aren't buying this. It's like we've accepted that this has got to happen, and we're going forward with it. When I was here in May, this program was pretty well laid out. Now it's kind of more refined. And I asked some of the facilitators, why isn't somebody, when you see all these angry people, why aren't we pushing back at the state level? And she said, well, we can't do that. ABAG has no mechanism to do that.
Okay, Bob, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, do you live in Novato? Was that?
Bob Ruzek,
Bob?
are you from Novato? Are you from? Yeah. Susan's asking. Yeah, supervisor's asking.
Novato? Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next speakers, David Schoenbrunn, Cheryl Ellerby, and Gail. Well, Gail, can you hold on just a second? I want to get to people that haven't spoken yet. So Mary Isaacs. So go ahead, David.
Thank you. David Schoenbrunn, Transdeaf. I wanted to make 3 points. The first is that I'm a strong supporter of regional planning, and nonetheless, the people who've come here with their Agenda 21 hats have at least one thing correct, which is their perception that public input doesn't actually matter to the process. I've watched the Regional Transportation Plan process for many years now, and I've noticed that, for example, the single most important public comment about the last RTP was the problem of the committed projects policy. Everybody that came to you, including the advisory council, said this is a serious problem and it interferes with the implementation of SB 375 and AB 32. And the MTC insisted on holding on to its past position or modifying it slightly with option 1. My second comment is I found it outrageous that MTC proposed a GHG emissions reduction target that on a per capita basis resulted in an overall increase in greenhouse gas emissions over the course of the plan. And so to me, this is throwing in the towel before even starting the game. I think it's outrageous. And it sends all the wrong messages in terms of the region's desire to reduce its emissions. Finally, my last point is that one of the things that the public requested in the earlier public outreach was a transportation scenario that did not include highway expansions. This is the single most effective way of reducing future GHG emissions. MTC's refusal to study an alternative like that shows its unwillingness to be a leader in the field of climate change or climate protection. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Well, I kind of wanted to talk about the transportation because, like, I'm in high school and I have to catch the bus from Marin City to Larkspur. And when I leave like 30 minutes early, because I use a bus pass, and I leave 30 minutes early, I'm still late. So I just wanted to know, like, can we change something with the transportation? Because they run like every hour if you don't have $1 for the bus. Because they provide you guys with youth passes and yeah.
Okay. Mary Isaacs is next, followed by Marge Todd.
Yeah, Mary Isaacs from San Rafael. I have a couple of comments. The first one I think is just an overall impression. I felt very insulted this evening. I felt insulted because I didn't feel that I was getting really real information about this issue. There were some handouts given to us, but also we were not given enough time to really look at things. We were not given enough time to really formulate questions and have them answered in a substantive way. I was very insulted by some of the presenters who were rushing us through, who spoke over questioners, who did not answer questions that were posed to them. I felt like we were being treated like we didn't know anything about anything that was going on and that we had no intelligence. I really felt that way. Also, particularly about the communities. the complete communities, I still have not one clue as to what that means. We were given a short little video presentation or a little slide presentation with no explanation of what complete communities meant. And then we were asked to give questions. We were supposed to give questions about something before we knew anything about it. I don't really think that's like completely backwards. So we had a lot of comments that raged across the board, which were good comments, but nothing to address the issue we were supposed to be talking about. So I feel like in some ways this was a great waste of my time, but in other, I've actually learned a great deal of very negative things this evening.
Marge, Todd, followed by Pam, Drew, and Michelle.
Actually, I don't know if it's going to do any good to speak to the committee here, but I hope for the sake of some people who aren't really as aware of what's going on, that I might possibly be able to shed a little light on it. I'm not an expert, but I have read up and observed and watched what's going on for several years now under the green, what I call hoax, and I don't call it a hoax, the green hoax. I have common sense, and I do believe in taking care of our environment. I do recycle, and I do use good sense in what I do with what the planet has provided for us. But this is all a railroading under the guise of green to force us to make moves that are not necessary. Our planet is going through a natural process that the planet goes through on its own with no help from us. We are just not that powerful. There's a powerful source at work that takes care of all these things. And we do have to use common sense, as I said, but we don't need all these drastic steps. And it's only a scam to get us all crammed into little places where we can be controlled better. Or be controlled period.
Pam, Drew? Pam, are you here? Okay.
I'm the chairperson for Novato Community Alliance. Many of our members are here tonight. Is Miriam Chion here? Yes? I read in the IJ that San Rafael's original allocation, housing allocation, was inequitable because of the size of the town compared with the size of Novato, and that was the reason that Novato's allocation was doubled with the alternative scenarios. Let me point out that Novato has no PDAs. Novato has resisted the call for PDAs. Let me point out that San Rafael has 2 PDAs, and we are told that 70%, maybe even 80% of the growth is supposed to go into the PDAs. Now, could that be the reason that Novato got less and San Rafael got more? Could it be some sort of political reason that doubled Novato's numbers? How can you be so politically motivated and expect us to believe your numbers? Your numbers change whenever somebody in political power cries out and says, no, can't do this, it's too much. Well, we don't want density. We don't want high density in our town. And your bedtime stories that you've been giving us tonight that are so beautifully polished with color pictures, they don't really satisfy us, because we know we've already seen it happening in our town and we know what you're going to do the next time. So, think about it.
Social engineering. Thank you, Pam. Is Michelle in the room? Michelle? Okay, followed by Michael Ray. Sorry.
Yes, I completely agree with the speaker before me. People don't want this. They do not want you to come into their towns and change the personality of those towns with all the little high-rises and people crowded into them, sharing bikes. How many of you want to share a bike? I want to be able to drive to the grocery store. I don't want to have to hop on a bus or get on a footpath that's been put in front of my house. I don't want it. I don't want you guys here. I have 2 boys that are moving out of state. One already has because he doesn't want to stay to see this. So don't kid yourselves. We do not like it. We want you to go away. Go bother some other country. Also, a lot of you people don't know, and I said this in the other room, that the state parks, if they don't have enough money to keep up with, all that money is being funneled into this group out here. So they can force this stuff down your throat. And I, for one, I don't like it. I don't like that you've run out of time for questions to be answered, and you now have this new system because you've gotten a lot of rebuttals. And the other towns don't like it one bit.
Michael?
Good evening. My name is Michael Reif. I'm here looking at Station C, and there is a question that's posed: how should region accommodate projected growth? And it gives an option of A, B, and C, or D. And D is if you oppose the 3 growth patterns above, offer your suggestions on how the region can accommodate projected growth. Well, my suggestion is decreased government involvement and control of the economy and communities so that robust organic growth can create jobs and allow local communities to create policies and build housing at fair market rates that negate the need for government-controlled affordable housing mandates by unelected elitist bureaucrats. MTC and ABAG, welcome to Revolt 2012.
Thank you. I would like to ask a question of any of you. Is there one example you know of in the entire world where a city that's been taken over by all of this sustainable development actually works? If there is a city where the livability of the people, when this plan is totally in existence, are happy. I would say that our best example that we have right now is Portland, Oregon. My son lives there, and Portland tried this several years ago, and it's been a disaster. The people are not happy. They are moving away, and the transit system, the small little roads that they have to travel on with cars because they're being forced into a transit, is not working. People are using less than they did several years ago. And people are moving away by the thousands. It's become so ridiculous, they've even started a sitcom called Portlandia. And if you haven't seen that on television, you need to. It'll give you an idea of what your future plans for the Bay Area are like. And it truly is something that we do not want. This is the United States of America, where we are supposed to have freedoms and liberties. And your plan is coming directly from the United Nations Agenda 21. This is not just a Bay Area plan. It's going on across the nation, across the world. If you don't know that, you need to do your research. Thank you.
Frederick Glidden, Eleanor Sluys, and then Walter Tullis.
Hi, my name is Phaedra. I just want to thank everybody that came here to ask questions, because I think that it's important that we know what your plan is for us. The only question that I have, and I've yet to have anybody answer it, what is this social justice business and what does our government have to do with that?
That socialist communitarianism language.
Phaedra, yeah, we're making note of the questions, and we'll have a little opportunity at the end for answers. Okay?
Answer the question.
Eleanor, are you here?
Eleanor Sluice from Eleanor. Thank you, Eleanor Sluice from Novato, and Novato is a complete community. We are diverse. We have many affordable housing. We're pretty well happy. We need some more retail, but the question is that we've worked very hard to get 778 units available for the next housing session. And many of us do not want 1,600 because we do not have the infrastructure, the water, the sewer drains, the schools. And so I want to talk about research and development. A lot of the money that MTC is getting is federal money. I think it is misplaced. Federal money needs to go at this time for research, development, education, universities. Palo Alto has many more universities than we do. That's where the jobs are going for research, technological advances. The changes in the vehicles need to really be reduce the diesel fuels, change to electric, change to solar. So I think it's the money that the federal money is being wasted for this project. It needs to be reduced, and the money needs to go to where it really should be for California. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Eleanor. Walter Tullis, followed by Ray Lorber.
I'm a 30-year resident of Novato. Worked for an international corporation, was a planner myself, so I understand the logic of planning. What I have trouble with was last year we had ABAG attend the Margaret Todd Center and try to explain the ABAG process for coming up with what they call the allocations, which are literally quotas. And in doing so, the planning director indicated that the premise behind the entire operation is that each community in the 9 counties must have 4 levels of income. If you do not have those at this time, they will be imported into your community, words to that effect. So my question is, if that's the fundamental premise that drives this entire game, coming from HCD down through ABAG, through the state legislature, and then funded by developers and funded by people like Nova Braddock downtown with the pools of money they put together for the developers, I think that the question here is, we're at a question in the society of are we going to re-engineer our society over the top of the current residents regardless of their intention to do so? And that's what I think a lot of the comments here tonight are about. I realize it's a dilemma, but I think what's happening is some of the freedom of decision in that is being taken away from the voters because there's no vote here.
Yeah.
There is nothing. I'm not sure how you would do that because the structure that you're working with is a regional structure, which is a quasi-governmental agency. And at the same time, the needs that are being attended to are needs. It's a question of how far we can go and how much we can afford, and I understand all those dilemmas. Just it feels like homeowners and taxpayers feel completely unempowered in the process. It's an odd feeling. So, thank you.
Ray Lorber, followed by Barbara and Gallon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the group this evening. I'm Ray Lorber, and for those who know me, I'm a very committed community activist. I've done great things for the community. I work hard for the community. Whenever I need something to get done, I approach the authorities with the "how can I help you?" rather than asking them for their help. I've found it very effective. I've done some fantastic things in our neighborhood that have never been able to have been accomplished previously. Using the approach, how can I help them? How can I provide the resources within our community to better the organization of the city and the county? One thing was missing this evening, which is what you're hearing in retrospect, is you didn't approach the group with, "we want to work with you." What we heard was, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Do you have any questions about it? Wrong approach, and you're getting beat up because of it. Thank you.
Just to let you know, we have 7 more cards to go through. Those of you who have already spoken, I put your cards aside. The supervisor.
My name is Barbara Dolan.
Sorry.
You have elected me 7 times to the board at the College of Marin. I am going on 26 years of service to this county. You and I have both taken an oath of office. That oath is to stand up and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California. As I sit here tonight listening to the people that elected you, I feel as if I am in a foreign country. The type of plan that you are proposing is not a benefit to me, my family, my neighborhood, or my community. I am talking about people that have worked long and hard for the right to own cars, to own their homes, to reside in apartments and make free choices because it is their will, not based on the will of any government or federal entity. This country is different from other countries in the world. And as I have traveled throughout the world, originally as a stewardess, I will tell you that we are far different from other countries. Other countries would very much like to have the right to choose, as we do in this country, based on a Constitution, a Declaration of Independence, and a Bill of Rights, like no other country in the world has.
Barbara, that's your time. Okay.
Let's let her finish. Let her finish.
Susan? We're enforcing this for everybody, please.
I would also like to tell Supervisor Adams that we have declared eminent domain here in Marin County.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay. Susan, are you here? Okay. Susan Kirsch?
It's Susan Kirsch from Mill Valley, California. Some of the rest of you on Sunday might have seen Susie Orman on Meet the Press talking. Susie Orman is the financial expert who's written many books about that. She commented about federal spending and governmental spending, and she gave it a grade. The grade that she gave spending, governmental spending, is an F. And she also talked about transportation options, and what she talked about is to say, our middle class is gone. And what we have is a freeway to poverty. And what seems to be going on here is a continuation of reckless government spending on this kind of project. And the comments we hear from people tonight is an indication of that kind of reckless spending. And the transportation option that we're getting is the freeway to poverty.
Jeff Roots?
No one supports this plan.
Kathy McLeod?
No one has spoken in favor of this plan.
I'm Jeff Rhodes. I'm a citizen from San Rafael. And I first off want to say that I do support the notion of regional planning because, hold on just a second, listen to what I have to say. The issue here is that we do have to make decisions about how we spend money in the future to maintain our infrastructure and improve our infrastructure. So it is necessary to do this as we go forward in the future. The difference, however, is on how we make those decisions. And what I see here, quite frankly, is a situation where we really need to do a do-over, because there isn't even an understanding of terms or an understanding of the implications of the decisions that are being proposed tonight. And what really has to happen is something more like the Envision Utah process, where there's a process of identifying values of citizens and understanding what choices really mean. A lot of people here say they're against high density, and that's understandable. But what does high density mean? What are these agencies, what is really being proposed here? What are the cities like that you're talking about? How can you expect this group of citizens to sit down in a small room and be bombarded with all sorts of information and arrive at some sort of meaningful input for the process? This is really not working, folks. We got to do better. We got to find a way of engaging the communities and really hearing what they care about and presenting options to them and explaining in concise and understandable terms what those options mean to their lives. Otherwise, we have a sham, and this really is a sham. I'm a person who understands this stuff, and yet what I see is not an effective way of disseminating information and encouraging dialogue and response.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Kathy McLeod, Joan N, and K. Those are our, I think it's Joan and K.
Hi. I'm sorry I got here late, but I'm here with my son, and you know I think I can understand the frustration, but I also see the other side, and I think that a lot of communities do want to be a more condensed community so that they can have better ways to bike and walk and, you know, go out into the open space. And it seems to be working in some areas. I know for one, well, Austin, Texas, for one. I have a place there, and it's really working well. No, but it really, I think that Marin is very unique because there's little tiny cities, you know, and I think that there should be a master plan in each city. Each city should be able to come together and decide what they want in their own community. It shouldn't just go across the board, but I think that each city might want to have their different ideas of what they want.
That's not what sovereign.
Please finish, Kathy.
Well, I just think that a master plan should come from the grassroots of each area. And I know that there are some areas like San Rafael has a pretty good, you know, condensed city that seems to work for them. And, you know, you go a little bit outside of that, it's more rural, and then it comes back into a city again. And that's how it is in Marin. It's a small county, and we've got a lot of open space. We have one corridor of transportation, and we really need to make the most of it.
Okay, Kathy, that's your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Was Joan here, or we'll go on then to Kay. Kay, you'll be the last one tonight.
Hi, my name's Kay Tokrud. I'm from Santa Rosa, and I'm a Democrat. And I agree with most of the previous comments, but I would like to talk a little bit about what this plan does to property values. Your plan wants to restrict most new development for the next 25 years in small priority development areas. And since most towns have basically a quota of how much new housing they will be allowing in each city, what will happen is that properties not located in priority development areas that are undeveloped or could be developed may not receive any permits to build housing. Because what you're doing is you're using federal transportation money to be doled out as grants to cities that will build in those zones. And so you're influencing the cities to discriminate against property owners that don't own land in those small areas. Property values of undeveloped land not in those areas will be decreased very significantly, and that's unfair. That is not equal protection. So you are violating the law by attempting to restrict, develop only in certain areas, and that is completely wrong.
Discrimination.
Yeah.
Give our money to Goldman Sachs.
So don't be dangling that carrot of our federal transportation money in front of our city council members, because we know that most of them will take the money and hurt their citizens, because that's what we're looking at here. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously the biggest concern that I hear this evening is the idea that there will be forces that are greater than our own communities that are telling us how to live our lives. And I will work on behalf of our community to ensure that the local land use decisions that we make for our own community. In the plan as it's been proposed for allocation, Marin County has been asked to take only 1.5% of the future growth. And I think that is a reflection of the kinds of things that I've heard people be concerned about. Limited water supply, quality of life, the character and the natural beauty, protection of our ag resources in West Marin. We've been asked to take 3% of the jobs. I think that the idea, and I have been an advocate for what people refer to as smart growth, where you do orient some of the future development around your transit. You focus it on those corridors where transit is going to occur, because we want to encourage folks to be able to move towards alternatives to driving our cars alone, since we can't build enough freeways, roads, or other ways to move around. So I'm aware that we have a responsibility to participate in the region, but I'm also aware that we have a responsibility to protect the character of our communities. I do feel that forums like this are useful. I appreciate you taking the time to come here, fill us up with your concerns. I will pay attention to that, and I'll look forward to what other folks who represent people in the different communities have to say as well. Thank you.
I know it's been a long evening. I do want to show you that I do carry around a copy of the Constitution with me. I understand the oath of office. If I can please have the courtesy of you listening to me. I've sat here quietly and listened to you tonight, and I would like an opportunity to share some of what I've heard from you. I hear the passion and I hear the anger about feeling like there's a top-down approach to what's going on with this planning process. I have expressed that concern when I've attended ABAG meetings. I do believe that organic and from community upward is the best way to go, and that's how I've operated as a district representative in my county. I think we are all trying to figure out how to address the need for communities that are vibrant and that can actually have our children still live here. I have children that can't afford to live here. I have a daughter that earns a pretty decent wage and she can't afford to live here. So I don't get to have my grandchildren and my daughter living in the community I live in. And I think that we have an obligation to at least have the conversation about it in a respectful way to solve the problem. I've criticized the regional agencies about the process. I do believe that there have been some missteps, and I'm going to work very hard to correct those over the course of the next several months to over a year to ensure that people do understand. Some of the comments I heard was, what are the definitions of some of these terms that we're using? How are we applying those? Are we really truly going to be able to have local control in how we determine the character and that we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all approach in how we're handling this. And this, in a state as large as California, which is larger than many countries in Europe, you know, that's a big issue. And we have a state legislature that has passed some legislation that, quite frankly, can be very difficult for us at the local, even regional, but certainly at the local level to implement. And especially when we have, you know, threats of lawsuits and different interest groups. But I do think that in a community that cares about each other and their neighbors, that there is an opportunity to have civil discourse about this and problem solving. And I remain committed to that. And I also will remain committed to providing the information about the limitations that we have in our infrastructure, in our community character, in the concerns that I've heard here tonight. But I would ask that each of us leave here thinking of how we would want to see our community grow within the context of what makes Marin special, and so that I can bring that message back. There's going to be housing built here, and we get people submit applications all the time. So how do we do that in a way that embraces the values and the principles that we here in this county bring? And, you know, all I can say is that I will continue that commitment to listen. 2 ears and 1 mouth, I think, goes a long way. And I think if more of us were able to do that, we would actually be in a better position to have a plan that I can bring back to ABAG and represent with my voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you to our panel. I appreciate Supervisor Kinsey and Supervisor Adams being here. Thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
What went wrong with your answers and the questions?
Well, basically, there wasn't enough time, and I'm sure that was I can't say this for sure, but it seems like it was deliberately set up this way. There was a ton of information presented. There was a ton of opportunities for people to ask questions, and 0 time for basically any of those questions to be answered. And in some cases, the questions were just totally ignored, or people were spoken to patronizingly, or they were basically told to shut up, that it was the presenter's turn to talk. I felt that to be extremely insulting. I found it to be treated just like, as we were referred to at the very beginning of this, we were referred to as kids, because some people were speaking out, and so we were being treated as if we were children, and we were being given all the information. It was very upsetting. I was very annoyed by this meeting. I didn't learn much of anything except that there's very definitely an agenda, and maybe we get a chance to hear a little bit about it, but now we can all go home now, and I wouldn't be surprised if the things that we wrote down were just totally tossed into the trash can. And that's how I feel, Steve.
Excellent. Do you think any of the questions were answered here this evening?
No, I think factually they were not answered. There wasn't time for them to answer them, and the way the system was set up, it would have been better to have a question and then a response kind of thing, and it wasn't set up that way. So it was too great a task to try to answer any specific questions.
So what would you like to see from these kind of meetings?
Well, I think where they went wrong was I would have started off with local meetings that just asked people, okay, we have this albatross around our neck called SB 375 that requires us to do certain things. What do you feel about that, and where do we start? I mean, that's how you start a facilitation process, is you present the problem to people and you get them talking. And I think that would have been very rich. I think a lot of discussion would have come out about where we go. One thing might be, well, let's go back to the legislature and tell them we can't do it. Another route might be, well, here are some suggestions for how we might be able to comply. But you have to start at that local level, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to go along with the mandate, let's put our brains together and we'll figure it out, and then we'll try to get people to go along with it.
Well, I guess even SB 375 was not voted on by the people.
That's absolutely true, and we're in a state where spending is out of control, where there are a lot of really wild ideas for making the world a better place in someone's idea, and the legislature just pushes them through without really any thought to the financial aspects of it or the impact on people's liberty.
They told them to do this, and now they want to ask us for twice the money for the smart train.
And they want to ask us to tax us again. And if we don't if they don't raise taxes, then all these bad things are going to happen. They're talking about how all the state parks are closing. It's their fault for all these unfunded mandates, ramming this garbage down our throat, ramming the DREAM Act, all these other things. When what they need to do is take a step back, stop spending money, and try to save money. Stop passing all these silly little programs and sticking it to us.
The other thing that they're doing is they're driving their tax revenue base into the toilet. If they continue as a state to discourage business from developing here, and there's already an exodus of businesses, there's already an exodus of people following the jobs. Oops, there's already, and Steve, don't do this to me. There's already, I have no makeup on tonight. There's already, there's already this massive exodus of people out of the state of California. What they need to do to drive up the tax revenues and to bring back that tax base is they have to create incentives for people to come here and do business and for people to want to come to California and live here and send their kids to school and pay their property taxes. People are bailing. Yep. They're bailing. So they're talking about 2 million people coming here. I'm not quite sure where that 2 million is going to come. Right. They're leaving.
Businesses are leaving the state. Where is this coming from? Why do they think that they're going to have 2 million people when people are fleeing California because of policies like this? They're not doing anything to attract the businesses, the tax revenue, the income taxes by bringing people in here. Look at all the empty foreclosed houses, and they think that we're having a housing problem. They can't have it both ways. They can't say we have all these houses that are left abandoned, foreclosed upon, and yet say that we're going to have this super density housing. It doesn't make sense. And yet they continue to ram this down our throats saying, don't look at this, look at this.
And the constitutional implications are very, very powerful. Yes. You know, I mean, Susan Adams said that there was no eminent domain in Marin County. I know people who
not willing to take responsibility for the eminent domain.
No.
They want to say, oh, it's their fault. It's not our fault. We won't take liability. No, but you're going to allow it to happen. You're going to allow the mechanism for them to come in and steal property from people like you and myself by allowing this to continue.
Well, if you're outside of the urban growth boundary, if you're outside of that, and I think that's what the last lady who spoke was alluding to, if you're outside of that urban growth boundary, then conceivably your property values are going to be so diminished, and with the rezoning that happens with this, you might not be allowed to sell your private property or develop on it. And so right there, this is a huge constitutional conundrum. That's what worries me more than anything. You've got unjust takings, you have unjust compensation, you have ex post facto laws, right? All of a sudden you bought your house, it's been in your family for 40, 50 years, your ranch up in Sonoma, and now you can't build a house on it? You can't build a structure on it because you're not within the PDA?
Or they change the zoning.
Or they change the zoning? Come on. This is America. This is the stuff that Soviet nightmares are made of. It's frightening. It's just absolutely frightening. And it's great to see how many people came out here tonight.
Yes,
but there still weren't enough. I mean, we need more people here.
And it's incumbent on all of us to spread the word.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say at the end of the meeting was that I sat at a meeting in the spring over there at the Embassy Suites where they had the initial meetings for public input. And 2/3 of the people in that room made it very, very clear that they did not agree with a lot of the assumptions and with a lot of the outcomes that they were telling us we were supposed to be voting on. And a lot of the voting didn't take place, and a lot of people stopped voting, so at one point half the people were voting. And now I'm sitting here today at this meeting, and I'm in on the transportation section, and they show this film that they made, and the film says, basically, we had these meetings in the spring, and we listened to your input, and you told us that you wanted this and that vis-a-vis transportation and housing. So then we're sitting in this transportation section of the meeting tonight, and in this film that they produced, they said, oh, well, in the springtime, you all participated in these ABAG MTC meetings and you gave your input about what you'd like to see in terms of transportation and housing. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not true at all. 2/3 of the people in that meeting here in Marin County were clearly objecting to the premises on which their assumptions were made and the results that they were saying we wanted. Half the time people weren't even voting. At one point, about half the people in that room stopped voting in protest. And so what I wanted to say to Susan Adams and to the other folks who were in there today was, this is part of the problem. There's a trust deficit with the government, and there's a trust deficit with our elected officials. And the reason is because we came to this meeting, we were told that we could ask questions, and we would get the answers. We didn't get any answers tonight. They said that they were going to post them on a website. I'm not sure how that's going to come down. I don't believe that's going to happen, and neither does anybody else who was here tonight. So until they find a way to win the trust back of people, that they really are working on our behalf, and that they really are working for us, this is just going nowhere fast.
Did you hear any questions that were actually answered?
No. I sat through 3 of the public comment sections, all 3 of them, except I had to leave, and I missed a little bit in the second one, and I missed a little bit in the first one. But I saw the majority of them. Not one question was answered, and I asked some people who were there for the sections I missed if any questions were answered, and they told me not one single question had been answered. And they had this person writing things on a whiteboard. Who knows what's going to happen with it? You know, whiteboards can be erased. So this is a very, very, very dangerous game that they're playing with the people of Marin County and for the Bay Area and the state of California, and frankly for the entire United States. So this is something that left a very, very bad taste in the mouths of most of the people here tonight.